even if you're tuning in the future with the pre-recorded video. So yeah, today's presentation is going to talk about my PhD in a nutshell. So I'll try and keep it short and not too laborious and show you the really interesting bits, because I'm currently in the field at the moment collecting data for a whole year. So yeah, it's going to talk about ethnography, theory and practice. I may allude to a few initial findings, but we will be signposted to a future conference, which will be in June, where we'll talk about the findings more in depth with the participants themselves. So the contents, we'll go over a little bit of a literature review, then we'll talk about the research aims and objectives for this PhD. And then I'll talk about ethnography as an overview, as a methodology, because it's quite a unique methodology that I didn't personally know about it much before I started doing my PhD, and then how that looks within this methodology of the research. I'll discuss briefly about the theoretical framework of social inclusion, which I'll signpost for you to do some reading about because it's really interesting, and then give you a bit of an insight into what a supported internship is and a few initial findings, which I alluded to before. And then again, some question and answers, which I'm more than welcome to take. So the literature review in short really is young people with disabilities have a very small network of friends, often with a similar identity, and face regular social isolation. Young people with learning disabilities are twice as likely to not be in education, employment or training. And unfortunately, and the shocking statistics at the moment is 6% of people with disabilities are in employment. Recent statistics for the East Midlands are suggesting that only 2.4% of young people with disabilities are in employment, and that's had a pretty detrimental effect with COVID as well. So they are pretty shocking. However, there is a little bit of a light to this tunnel at the moment, because supported employment programs do appear to be an effective transitional route from education to employment. So they are helping to smoothen this transition from school or further education or sixth forms into an employment area. However, again, when we look at the locality of Derbyshire, there are only 2 supported internships acknowledged by the local officer. They are particularly called Project Search Derby and Project Search Chesterfield. These typical programs normally take 12 young people, so we've only got 24 spaces for the whole of Derbyshire for these young people with disabilities. In a nutshell, Project Search is the largest supported internship in the world. It is effectively a program or a curriculum that can be embedded in employers to help support this program to support young people into employment. And statistically, at the moment, worldwide, 70% of these young people gain employment after the program, with 60% of them gaining full-time employment, which is really, really interesting going forwards. Although work, it's definitely more than just money. The quote on the screen is for you to read there, but in a nutshell, really, it's extrinsically linked with identity. And the business of work is not simply to produce goods, but to also help to produce people. And research by, obviously, Jerry, my supervisor in the room, which is quite interesting as well. Its work is an important arena for broader and deeper social inclusion. So that is just a little bit of background information of the literature, but more importantly, I'm going to talk about my research because it's quite interesting. Or I say it is in particular anyway. So the aim of the research is to identify the ecological pathways present for social inclusion within a supported internship from the perspectives of young people with disabilities. What this means is an ecological pathway, if you're not familiar with it at all, it's by a theorist called Bronfenbrenner, and I like to use it like an onion. There's lots of layers to a young people's identity and inclusion. And a supported internship, obviously what I've talked about before, it's a program to transition from education to employment. And I really want to stress the importance it's from the perspective of the young people. Research notoriously does not include many perspectives of the young people. A lot of researchers sometimes speak on behalf of the young people, but my research very much values their voice. In the sense that I'll talk about it further, we have various methods that are adapted to support these young people. And they've even came up with various names for the methods. So walking interview, they call it a walkie-talkie as an example, or we do like a sit-down interview, which realistically it's more like a conversation, and we call it a comfy convo. Well, that's what they call it. And this was very much how I really envisaged the research to be, is with putting these young people forwards and giving them a platform to speak. We talked at a recent conference by the NDTI, and it was for me to talk about the research on quite a national platform, because of supported internships are going forward and doubling as a whole. But it was actually almost led by the participants themselves, and it was incredible to give these young people a platform to talk about their experiences of supported internships. And that is very much my research as a whole. So yeah, on the screen is a few of the objectives as well. So it's very much to collect a real rich insight into what a supported internship is and how it can change the depth and breadth of social inclusion for these young people with disabilities. And it's to almost understand the processes which mediates these depths and breadths of social inclusion as experienced directly by the interns. And that is what really, really is important to me. So the theoretical framework, which I've alluded to, and I really would emphasize to signpost you to Simplican's article. I won't give it justice to talk about it in a couple of minutes, so I definitely recommend have a look at it, because it really gives a comprehensive overview of what social inclusion is. Social inclusion is a term that's thrown around all of the time, really. And this article is a really good way of amalgamating lots of theoretical perspectives and research to come up with some framework of what it entails. So the column 1 is various academics suggesting what social inclusion is. So it's not just with people and staff with disabilities. They must have access to rather public services, access to various activities, and really have a social valued role in the community. And then column 2 is not what it is, it's amalgamation of various arenas for participation, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then column 3 is these outcomes, the really positive outcomes of what social inclusion looks like and how it can really impact the young people. So from a perspective of happiness, self-esteem, well-being, value, increased self-efficacy. So it's very important to really understand the importance of social inclusion, but I'd like to signpost it to you to properly read. But I'll go into a few bits of detail of the model. So there's particularly 2 broad arenas of Simplican's model of social inclusion, and they are 2 interconnected domains, and that surrounds interpersonal relationships and community participation. So if we look into this into more detail, the interpersonal relationships we're starting to look at what are these relationships, so the category of them. So we talk about these young people is who are the people that they are mixing with and having a relationship with. Is it a bonding relationship? So is that with someone that they share a similar identity with, i.e. a disability? Or is it more of a bridging relationship? So actually they're having a relationship with people with non-disabilities. Research suggests that typically young people with disabilities largely only have relationships with people with disabilities. That's quite evident when you look at special schools, when they are in a rather exclusive environment in that kind of sense of where they're just mixing with young disabilities themselves. And then you look at the structure, so the length of that relationship. Is it reciprocal, the network, the density, the homogeneity? So you really are looking at how are these relationships formed, and also the function, because various relationships are different. So is it the function from an emotional perspective, an instrumental perspective, so more like providing goods or services, or an informational perspective, so i.e. a teacher, which is providing information, advice and guidance. And then more of this, the second area is, where are these interpersonal relationships taking place? So my research, or the research I'm doing on behalf of the young people, is particularly in the area of employment, or education to employment, which is where it's underlined. And I'm trying to understand what are these relationships like, and what kind of relationships do these young people have in the various capacities in their supported internship. So are they segregated, such as are they just with other people with people with disabilities? Are they semi-segregated? So maybe they are facilitated by staff members, or are they always in a full mainstream setting? None of these are better or worse than each, because they all have different benefits and drawbacks, such as if young people have relationships in a segregated setting, they may have a more common identity and bond with other people with disabilities, which can increase trust and reciprocity and having a shared identity, where your mainstream kind of structure is being exposed to more diverse young people or ages or ethnicities. And then when we look at that final kind of gauge, it's that level of involvement. And this is more the depth of a relationship. So are they just present? So like just from an inclusion perspective, are they just within that setting, observing, or are they full participating? So this is also important to gauge that when you look at it from a supported internship perspective, so these young people are gaining work experience and 10 to 12-week placements. They sometimes need to be present in order to progress to encounter and participation. So if we go and talk about if we're learning to be a porter, you might first just start observing and understanding the role, which to then hope that the young person progresses to participatory role and actually is doing the full portering position. That is just a nutshell of what social inclusion is and the framework for my PhD. But I really want to talk about, this is the thing that I'm incredibly passionate, because there isn't much research or this type of research within the field for disabilities, and that is called ethnography. So ethnography, it's a branch of anthropology which originally studied the native tribes and culture, and it took years to conduct. So you'd have researchers going far away from their homes in native lands, learning languages and tribes, and almost effectively trying to understand a different world, a different social world to what the researcher knows themselves, so such as a tribe. And another key factor of ethnography is that long-term immersion. So it used to take years being immersed in this setting, mirroring, observing, just effectively creating very rich, thick descriptions and notes about what is going on. And the real valuable aspect of ethnography, particularly when you're studying young people with disabilities and certain marginalised groups, is just by having increased and ongoing presence as a researcher, it enables that rapport building with participants. And it also allows for time to unpick the ecological layers, so that onion that I was talking about a young person. So this I saw was a really suitable methodology for my research, because I was researching rather vulnerable young people according to ethical procedures that required immersion and a rapport. So these young people were confident to talk about their experiences, their lived experiences of having a disability, and their time on the supported internship. So how does this look? So I started my data collection last September, and it's 35 weeks immersion with us in a supported internship. So I'm 4 days per week, 8 till 4 a.m, based at the Royal Derby Hospital, which is where the supported internship is based. And I'm almost studying and observing and writing about these 6 participants who are aged 18 to 19 with an educational healthcare plan. All of these young people were from the same previous school, specialist school, which was in the local area of Derby. Again, the very much priority of this was to give voice to these young people. It was very open-ended, and it is open-ended because I'm still living this ethnography. We are got another 15 weeks to go, and absolutely loving it, because you are experiencing and understanding their social worlds. And so the methods were primarily hanging out. This is a term often coined by Hammersley and Atkinson, which is a key academic for ethnography if you're interested. And what that means is, in it, what it's saying really, it's quite an informal way of just being present and just building a rapport with these young people and observing how they're getting on and writing notes. And this is also complemented by various other methods. So walking interviews, or I like to just call them walking conversations, which kind of understands the embodied experience of these young people. So you're walking next to them around the hospital, asking them questions or talking about the day, how their placements are going, and various questions we talk about at the weekend. And it's just very informal of that way of building a lovely rapport, but also gaining rich, thick descriptions in a comfortable manner. And then also some of the more formal information that was really important is like document analysis. So the interns do lots of reflection forms and have curriculum work, which I'll talk about their internship more in particular. And also something that I never envisaged was photos. I remember when I started in September with the young people and I told them about my research, and they was like, oh, that would be amazing. But they all said, well, it'd be a bit boring if we don't include any photos, wouldn't it, to tell our story? And I was like, yeah, you're quite right. So that's another element that now is in this PhD, which is quite rare actually within academic research, is to have lots of photos to tell these young people's stories. And if the young people want it, it's going in. So we've got various quotes from them. We've got selfies of their experiences when on placements. And yeah, it's a really lovely way to convey their experience and journey of being on this supported internship. And like everyone says, a picture tells 1,000 words, and it absolutely does. I could never convey an intern's smile when they first had their first day on placement wearing their really smart uniform. And it's just absolutely lovely to see it within this thesis. So Project Search overall, Search Derby, is a supported internship. Just checking that you can hear me. So yeah, Project Search Derby is a program where an educational provider holds the licensed curriculum. And it is this, it's almost like a curriculum like the national curriculum to help support academics or teachers and job coaches to give them a sort of framework. So the school buys this license and you've got a nice curriculum to follow. But on the ground, how it works is 90% of these young people are on placement in very meaningful real life jobs, which we'll talk about in a minute. And 10% of it is class-based learning. So at the moment, 9 till 10, young people come into the classroom, they'll do some learning of various topics. It could be surrounding their independent skills, or it could be more broader of potentially preparing for driving licenses or theory tests and curriculum work. It's really, really meaningful to give them the best possible opportunity to succeed in work. And then once it comes to 10 o'clock, they all go off to their various placements. And then at the end of the day, 3 till 4, they all have a reflection form and time for them to all come together. So again, that bonding relationship kind of perspective, where all the interns then come together from the various placements and discuss about the day, the high, the lows of how it could be better. And it's been really, really valuable for them. And you can see throughout the time how more reflective they have become of talking about their experiences being on the programme. So these placements vary within the hospital. They're typically delivered by the trust, so the NHS trust, or ISS, which is like the soft service placements. So examples can include portering, or on the reception, or in the restaurants, or in the cafe, or ward hosting. the placements are very much created and formed based on the young people themselves. And this is really lovely how it's tailored to the young people. They're not bank placements where interns rotate around. So at the start of the year, some of the interns really expressed an interest for portering. A placement was never within portering before, so they created and they formed a relationship with a portering team to ensure that this young person was given the opportunity. And then how it works as well on the ground, with this programme, there is 2 staff. So the tutor will deliver the educational context and content, 9 till 10 and 3 till 4. And then you also have the job coach who will help with that preparation for work and also providing that task list to help break down the tasks when they're on placement, and a lot more support. Both of them are really on the ground, valuable members at ensuring that their experiences are the best it can be. So that is a rough overview of supported internships. And if you have any questions about supported internships at all, we'll bring it to the end because I would incredibly value the questions from yourself. And I just wanted to put these photos on here. And this is kind of what I was talking about before, where I do really agree with the interns themselves that it just portrays such a lovely journey. So we started in September with an induction process. So the interns would learn about all of the various policies and mandatory training that all staff members have. And you're doing a lot of research on the computers and becoming very prepared and feeling that sense of belonging. And then so you can see the selfie second photo in on the right. We was actually doing some like a prerequisite to one of the interns' placements, and he was bagging up various condiments in his role in preparation for when he was in back of house catering. And all of us, it was just such a lovely supported environment where we was all working together to help this young person become prepared and ready for starting his placement. And this particular person had cerebral palsy, and he couldn't see. He can't see below his nose. So he was putting into place various reasonable adjustments to make sure that he could, succeed and do really well when he started his placement. And you can see here, this is what's quite different to other research is I'm very much present as a researcher. So when we looked at my methodology, I didn't want to be that researcher in the corner, just observing and being quite covert. I wanted to build a rapport with the young people and almost start experiencing some of their roles. So it wouldn't be often because I didn't want it to detract from their experiences because it obviously is their programme. But whenever we would go and observe them, very much I would be present and asking them questions, and it was really lovely. And the top right corner, which is a really interesting aspect of this supported internship, is the alumni group. And this is a fantastic area where it enables these young people to have a very strong sense of belonging to the supported internship programme. So the programme ran since 2019, and each Wednesday at 3 till 4, you've got past and present interns from the programme who all come and meet up socially and just have a chat, or we play games, or we go to like bowling or various social events. And it's a lovely aspect of just increasing that level of interpersonal relationships and a strong connection to the programme and to others. And it has been an element where it's formed a greater network of friendships for these young people. And it's incredibly valuable. They've become advocates for the programme. So a couple of weeks ago, you can see in the middle photo with an intern called James. He's got an employability board. And we went to the Derby County Community Trust Careers Fair. So these were very much advocates of the supported internship. They was promoting the programme as well as being on it. And It's absolutely lovely to see their passion for the programme. And you can see in the classroom as well, I don't know why I'm pointing to it because you can't see it, on the bottom, we've got various like art projects. So the job coach is very passionate of doing the arts on a Wednesday in the curriculum time. So it's a lovely sense of camaraderie between all of the interns when they're on the placement, while they're on the programme, while also doing very meaningful jobs. I'm going to briefly talk about some of the initial findings. I don't want to go into this too depth because it wouldn't do it justice, and I want it really to come from the young people themselves when we have the conference in June. But these are some of the observations I've made in relation to social inclusion of the impacts supported internships have. So, first of all, I always ask the interns when we started in September of why did you want to come to a supported internship, and particularly at the hospital? Because I was almost, when I was thinking about how am I going to be when I enter this hospital environment, I might be a bit nervous myself. It's a bit of an unknown. And something that really stuck with me and I thought was very powerful is they wanted to give back. Their motivation of being on this supported internship was, well, I want to get a job and very much give back. And some of them had long histories of being a patient themselves. And they almost felt it was their responsibility and pride to, give back to the local community. And when we talk about the hospital setting itself, it's a large employer, and a benefit of a large employer, which appears evident within this setting, is it provides a wide range of placement opportunities with the likelihood for these young people to progress to employment within the host business. So the prior cohort, 100% of these young people progressed to employment. When you compare that to the initial statistics, and I talked about it on the literature review of only 5% of young people gain employment, or in the East Midlands, 2.4%, you can see this is having a very clear route and impact for these young people gaining employment. And I visited during my research the school that these young people used to go to, the specialist school in Derby, and I was wanting to find out why are they so passionate for the internship, and they said, and it always stuck to me, and said, if some of these young people don't go on this internship, you support them for 18 years of their life, and effectively you may see them on the streets if in the next 5 years if they didn't get on the supported internship. And that really stuck with me in the sense that this program is having a genuine impact in transforming lives. And when I talk to various parents of these current interns, it's not just transforming the intern, and it's really interesting when I observe them from September to getting to know them now in February, they have absolutely transformed. Their confidence. Some would come into the program almost quite withdrawn and not speaking, and now they can't stop talking. They're so proud and passionate. And when you talk to the parents, it's amazing to hear the relief they have, and they have lower anxiety of their future for their children. And it's incredibly powerful to hear how it's not just impacted one person, it's had this huge bluster effect and impacted so many around them. Almost, we call, when we look at this ecological system that Bronfenbrenner talks about, it's the microsystem, and it has a huge impact on so many more people than we think, than just the interns themselves. And when we talk about bridging relationships, so these young people, again, they attended a specialist school prior to the internship and had few relationships with people beyond disabilities. And this is a really good example of they've been exposed to such a diverse area, which increased significantly the amount of interactions that these young people with interns had with people with non-disabilities. So, for example, you've got one of the interns at the moment is within the portering team, and he started off with oxygen portering, which may be one or two people, And then he kept saying, I want to progress and get the most out of it. So he then progressed to patient portering, within like theatre portering, and now he's within A&E portering. And you can see the sheer veracity and impact just giving these young people an opportunity within a very mainstream real life setting has. And he's been offered jobs already on this internship to gain employment, which is incredible that they've been given such opportunities. But also the importance of those bonding relationships, which I've talked about before with the alumni group, that strong sense of belonging and opportunities to broaden friendships. So even it's taken some of the interns, they break up for the holidays because their holidays align with the academic year, and they're all with each other. The interns are going out to Derby and going to play pool. And by being on a program, it's enabled that strong level of connection and opportunity for them to gain independence. Because when we talk about independence, one of the things that's been really interesting with this internship is they all come to the internship independently. It's a key characteristic of supported internships is they must be independent travellers. So they'll get travel training and go from the house to the hospital. And for some of them, this was an incredibly daunting process to begin with. They'd never even got on a bus before. And some are taking an hour and a half to get to the hospital. And it's created such an amazing way in for them to become independent beyond the supported internship. They're going jotting around all over the city, meeting up with friends, and part of the internship as well. They get to be on a youth advisory board, which means they get to represent Project Search as a whole. So the two out of six of these interns are representing Project Search Derby on behalf of the whole Project Search, and they're going to have to travel all the way to Liverpool on bus to meet various other interns of all of the other internships around the country. And if it wasn't for this programme, they may never have had that opportunity to become confident with travel. But I've put public transport as a barrier because one intern would he would be highly frustrated with me if I didn't raise his concerns about transport, because there's a serious barrier actually to education, in the sense that it's very expensive. These young people have a gold card, which effectively should enable them to have free transport. However, there's a caveat to this: is they can't access it until 9:30 because it's in line with the elderly. So it means these young people are having to spend lots of money. And because supported internships are free, it's a typical potential barrier for quite a lot of young people gaining supported internships. And although I want to talk about one final area before, I'd love you to ask some questions, so it could be more of a two-way reciprocal conversation, is this internship has not just significantly benefited the young people themselves, it's really benefited the staff and various departments where the interns are on for their placements. So one of the interns currently, first he was in the canteen, and the canteen said themselves, he brought such a level of positivity to the area that it transformed the whole department. People was much happier, the staff was more happier, and they was aware and more considerate of young people with disabilities. And they said that without supporting a young person on the programme, they didn't bond as a group. And this is really interesting. By nurturing and mentoring a young person, they actually all became quite close as a group because they all had a common goal. They had to support this intern. And that's been quite evident within various programmes, placements. There's a lot of areas and departments have all become a lot closer since nurturing and mentoring a young person in the various placements. So that's a slight summary of my PhD in a nutshell. I would love if you have any questions, because there's lots and lots to talk about, and I'll hopefully get onto the Teams, or Jerry, you can fire them over and I'll answer them.
Well, first of all, Wykeham, just while the recording's still going, I just wanted to say thank you so much for that presentation. It was really enlightening. I was particularly interested when you talked, or you used the phrase, the processes which mediate breadth and depth of social inclusion. And then that's what you've gone on to talk about so eloquently. I was particularly interested in the way that the structure of departments and progression through to, say, portering of gas and air, to portering people, to portering in the A&E have created such confidence for the young people. And also interested in the points you make about travel. My mother is in the category who has to use the bus after 9:30, and in Sheffield people have quite a strong accent, and the bus driver frequently says to my mother, "You're twirly," and in other words, "You are too early." And so my mother and her friends describe themselves as the twirlies group, the too early for the bus. So on that note, I'm going to stop the recording if I can find the button.